It's a pleasure to welcome to the show Emelia Bohi, starting goalie from Denver's women's lacrosse team. Emelia, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of a tradition around here. I always start with the story of your very first save or your very first time you jumped into goal. Do you remember that?
I do. So I started lacrosse goalie my freshman year of high school in February. So tryouts were like end of February. And I played soccer my entire life. I wasn't really going to play a spring sport. And the lacrosse coach at my high school was like, no, you got to try it. You got to try it. I was like, no, it's okay. I'm good. Because I played ECNL soccer. I was traveling every weekend. Like, I was like, no, I don't need to do that. And she's like, no, it's okay. Like, you can just shoot, like, or you can just get shots after school. And so one of the seniors would shoot on me after school. Like, this was like 2 weeks up to tryouts, and she just shot on me every day. And then we played in like a winter league. There was like a winter league going on. And so in like the last game of winter league, I played in it. She was like, yeah, just throw yourself in there. I was so nervous. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. And I remember the first shot, the ball came at me. I just kicked it. I was like, I don't know what to do. And that was my first save. And like the second one was off my head, but my entire instincts were just soccer goalie, because that's what I grew up with. In my first save, of course, I kicked it. But yeah.
I was going to ask, so what made them think you would be a great lacrosse goalie? And it was because you were a soccer goalie.
Yeah, I was a soccer goalie. I played soccer and basketball like growing up. And then I also played softball. My dad played baseball. And so he was like, oh yeah, like threw me right into softball, like all that stuff. I always played catch with him in the backyard. And I got to high school and my dad was like, come on, you gotta play softball, like come on. And like all my family friends, because I was pretty good at softball. It was probably like my best sport, but I put so much time into soccer. I was like tunnel vision, like soccer, yes. Like been playing that since I was 2 years old, like club sport, like been playing that club my entire life. I have to play that. Yeah. And so like my tunnel vision was like so much in that direction, and I was like, no, like spring sports don't really matter, like not gonna play softball, like yeah. So
what do you think the soccer goalie taught you about lacrosse goalie? I feel like I've got some answers, but I'd love to hear what it taught you.
I think I use my body well to save the ball, like because in soccer, like coming out, when a girl's coming down the field, dribbling soccer ball and it's 1v1, like you have to step out or you're screwed. Like you have no other option. And so like coming out and just like using my body and playing high, I really like to play high, and like angles and stuff, I guess I learned really well from soccer of like positioning in the goal and like knowing what you're giving up in that sort of way. But
that was going to be my main answer, was like the positioning, right? Yeah. Because like I remember like years after my college career, I played indoor soccer goalie, and I had never played. I was playing indoor soccer just to kind of stay in shape more than anything. But I was really good at, like, everyone was like, wow, you're so good at this. Like you must have been playing for a long time. I'm like, no, I just understand angles, right? And I know where to be to like, limit the amount of space that they have to shoot at and make my save easier. So I'm sure that
exactly
helped you quite a bit.
Yeah, went from a very big goal to a very tiny goal, but the ball also shrunk. So,
okay, so here's the question: easier to make a save in soccer or in lacrosse?
Oh, soccer, 100% soccer.
Yeah.
My last 16 games I played in soccer, I didn't get scored on.
Whoa, like, what's up?
Well, I also think that was when I decided I wanted to play lacrosse in college, and so I was like kind of like relaxed, and I was like, chill. It's nice.
Yeah. No, it's definitely like, if you give up 3 goals as a soccer goalie, that's a bad game. That's a bad game, right? And you can give that up in 20 seconds as a lacrosse goalie. So yeah, no battle there. So you mentioned you decided to play soccer, lacrosse, right? I'm curious, like, you're balancing all these sports. You're good at a lot of them. I imagine, like, you're really focused on soccer. Yeah. Why did you pick lacrosse, and what was that decision? How did that decision come to be?
So my sophomore year, it's kind of, soccer's similar to lacrosse in recruiting aspects, except So my rule change for soccer didn't happen until like halfway through my sophomore year. But so my sophomore fall, like I was going to showcases, whatever, going to like ID camp, same thing as lacrosse. And I was like having fun with it, but I wasn't really getting the interest I guess I wanted. And I also was kind of getting burnt out by the sport. Like, I've been playing it so long and all that stuff. And I loved lacrosse. Like I loved it. The sport, everything about it, like the fast pace, like soccer, I would get stuck. Like love soccer. My sister still plays. I'm not allowed to say anything bad about it, but like it was just a much slower sport. And lacrosse, it was like, oh, if the ball's at the other end, I want to watch this. Like soccer, I was like, I don't really want to watch this right now. So it's just a lot more fun for me, and I love the pace of it and everything. And so at the end of going into my sophomore year of lacrosse, we had the preseason, whatever. And so like my sophomore year, I became the starting goalie at my high school. I was the backup my freshman year. And so we played our preseason in high school. We did it's like out of league games, and then we do spring break trip and then start league. And so I had done all my like preseason league games, and I was like, I kind of got good at this. Like I was like, I'm not really good, but like kind of average. Like maybe I can do something with this. And so we went into spring break, and I told my parents before I went on my spring break trip, and I was like, I think I want to play this in college instead. And my parents have been telling me since I picked up with stick freshman year, they're like, you're totally going to play this. Like, this is just so much more your speed. It's like basketball plus like the goalie aspect of soccer. Like it's perfect. Like all the things you like, that hand-eye coordination of like what you had for softball going for you. Like this is like perfect for you. And I was always like, I just started this. Like that's not going to happen. And so I just like over my spring break trip, I was like, I want to play this. Like, I love this sport. Like, this is my sport. This is what I want to do. And I went up to my high school coach and I was like, okay, I want to do this. And she was like, okay, this isn't going to be easy, but let's do it. Like, sure, I'm going to help you, but this is not going to be easy. I was like, yeah, I know.
Yeah. And it's not. Yeah. Well, that's awesome. I love this sport as well. So we share that in common. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful sport.
It is.
And that's so cool of your parents of what they said, because in my mind, like, you know, if I have a daughter and she's playing soccer for, you know, whatever, 14 years, and we've sunk in all these resources, and she's like, I want to play lacrosse now. Like, what about soccer? Like, you know,
no,
so that was really cool on them to be very like, hey, this is actually better for you.
Yeah. Well, they were like that at first. That's what they said when I first started playing the sport. And then I told them I was switching, and they were like, wait, what? I was like, no, like, trust me. And then by the end of spring, they were like, oh, she's kind of good. I was like, yeah, thanks, guys.
Told you.
But no, they did support me a lot. But they had a little bit of hesitation when I first said I didn't want to play soccer anymore. Because I think at first they thought I would try to do both or something. But I was like, no, just lacrosse. They were like, oh. But yeah.
Now, how did you go about, you know, you start your freshman year? I mean, how did you go about getting good? Like, how'd you go about learning how to make saves? Were there camps, like specific coaches you worked with? Talk to me about that.
So my friend, who's the year above me, she now plays lacrosse at William & Mary. Her dad played goalie at Duke. But and so he was like, oh, I can just teach you kind of the basics. And I was like, okay. So like there's 2 weeks going up to it, like, and like the first, I guess when I started after I'd made the team, I would go over like on a weekend, and he would just like go over repetitive movements for the low shots, or like movements for the high, like just like the movement. So I was getting the movement down, because the positioning I kind of already had, and the hand-eye and all that stuff I had. It was just the movement on how to save the ball, because it was so like, I'm so used to like my hands pretty much being the exact same, and like diving and all of that. Right. It was weird to like the hip saves were not happening for me, or the low saves. Those were very complex in my brain. But so I just like worked on the motions for that. And then after I decided I wanted to play in college, my coach in my high school coach was like, okay, you need a trainer. And so I started training with Gary Morgan. He trains a bunch of goalies in my area, around the DC area. And so he just like once a week just drilled me with everything.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Any particular drills that you like, that you really felt really helped you?
Oh, my favorite was this one we would do with, so he would have like little, those like bouncy balls you get out of those machines, like you put the quarter in and it turns.
Yeah, bouncy balls.
Yeah, just the bouncy ball. Yeah. So he would shoot those, and I would use the end of my stick and try to save it. And I loved that drill. Like, loved it.
Yeah, because the amount of focus required to focus in on that little tiny ball is a lot more than a lacrosse ball. I like that.
Yeah, exactly. And if you can save that, your confidence is just like, I can save anything.
Yeah. Reminds me of dodgeball. It's like, you can save a bouncy ball, like you can save a lacrosse shot.
Yep.
So there you go.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So talk to me then about the recruiting process. How did it go for you? When did Denver first come on the map?
Yeah, so I decided I want to play in college, and my coach was like, okay, like, let's put a list together. And I was like, I know nothing about any schools. I'm a little sophomore. I have no clue. And so I was just like, I don't know, these schools sound good. Like, Denver's on, I literally couldn't even tell you the schools that were on there. Like, just ones that I'd heard of had like decent lacrosse programs. Like, I was like looking like not even ranked, nowhere close ranked schools at first. I was like, I just want to play. And so I like start emailing a bunch of schools, like for camp. I go to camp after camp. It was camp week tournament that weekend. Like, probably went to 5 maybe camps that summer, and I'd never been to a lacrosse camp before. And I went to 5 that summer because I was just like, I don't know, gotta meet coaches, gotta keep playing, gotta keep getting better. And so I met Britt, our goalie coach here, at Max Exposure, and I was like working with her, and I was like, wait, I kind of like she's like knows what I'm like, we're on like the same wavelength, like I like working with her, like. And I met a few other coaches I like I met the Loyola coaches there, and I was like, oh, I like working with them too. But like Britt was like warming me up one game, and I was like, I really like how she was like explaining kind of it in terms I understand, and not trying to change the way I play. Because some people, like, I go to some camps and they'd be like, okay, don't do that, don't ever do that again. Like, but like about like my positioning, like when the ball's behind, like I love to get interceptions. Like, that's my favorite part of the game, is that I don't have to just make the save. Like, I can get a cause turnover too, and I can help the defense. And so like they were like, oh no, like stay on your goal line and just don't turn around. And I was like, no, I don't like that. So like I liked how she would give me advice, but then I didn't have to take it. Like, she was like, don't feel like you have to take this, but like this is like an option. Most of the time I liked the options, but I don't think I ever didn't really like the options. But like I was nice how it wasn't like, you have to do this. If you want to be successful, you have to do this. Or if you want to play for me, you have to do this, or that sort of thing. And so I really liked working with her, and I was like, wow, I think it like that just kind of like skyrocketed my interest in Denver. And I was like you shouldn't choose a school based on a coach, but I was like, I mean, the school is awesome, don't get me wrong, I love it here, but it kind of piques my interest in like here in general. And so that was why I started really looking at Denver.
Yeah, love it. To that point about changing goalies around, like I'm the exact same way as Britt. And by the way, Brittany Read, like, for those that don't, I gotta be honest, I didn't know much about her until I watched the World Championships. And then I watched tons of those games, and she was just dominating, and I'm like, wow, like what a great goalie. So yeah, that's cool. Let's talk about her a little bit more. But to that point, like I never try and change around goalies. I'm going to give you a technique. If I give you a technique, I'm saying like, try it. I want you to try it. Like, and if you don't like it and you don't want to use it, then by all means, like throw it out, and I'm not going to be mad. I think that's the way it needs to be, because there's a lot of different ways to be a great goalie.
No, I agree. When I was coaching camps this summer, I was the exact same. I was like, no, like I'm going to give you advice. You do not need to take this. Like, maybe try it once. If it doesn't work, try something else. Like, the whole point of when I was coaching the girls, I was just like find your own style. Like, everyone needs to be different. That's what makes you unique. That's what sets you apart from other people. And that's something, like, especially with my mental game, I had to learn myself, because I was like, I would always compare myself to others. And like, there's a reason we don't play the same. Like, there's a reason that, like, I don't know, my coaches would always say, like, we don't want you all to play the same. Like, our coaches here are like, we don't want you to play the same. Like, if you're not playing well and that's not working, we need a new style to throw in there. Like, we need to change something up, and putting someone in that's going to play the exact same, it's not going to change much up.
Yeah. But I totally agree with that point. How do you describe your style? So you're a taller girl, right?
I am.
Yeah. And a lot of times when goalies are tall, at least on the men's side, like they'll get down in a little bit more of a squatted position, like, get a little bit lower in their stance. Like, how do you describe, your style of goalie play?
I used to squat really, really low. And then I would get kind of stuck. So I was working this season, I was kind of working on not getting too low and kind of narrowing my stance a little bit, because like I was always worried if I narrowed my stance too much, I wouldn't be athletic. Like, my whole like philosophy of playing when I was like starting to play was like just like using my athleticness and like that sort of stuff to make a save. And so I'd always think if I was too tall, I wouldn't be able to make the save. And so but we worked on it. And this one practice, they put this like band around my legs last year. And they were like, yeah, like, you're going to play like this. You're going to put this band around your legs so that you can work on your stance. Like, it's going to go in sometimes because there is a band around your legs, but it's okay. I was like, okay. And I remember I put it on. I was like, this is horrible. And I was like, whatever, I'm just going to trust them. And I took it off in the next practice. I just like was like, holy smokes, like game changer. I was like, wow. But I mean, it doesn't work for some people, but I was like, wow, glad I trusted them.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I also kind of change it up. Like, sometimes I'll play in, like, if I'm not seeing the ball as well, I'll play a lower arc. If I'm seeing the ball well, I'll play a higher arc. If the if the attack is like driving in a lot, I'll probably play higher. It kind of just depends on it depends on who we're playing, honestly.
Interesting. And keep them on their toes. Keep that opposing team on their toes, right?
Well, if you watch my games last year, I probably played like 20 different styles.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I love that. So how is Britt as a coach? What are some of the lessons that she's constantly harping on you guys?
I think that probably the biggest thing is mentality. Like, that she doesn't really over talk things about like how you're playing, the way you're trying to make a save, like all of that sort of stuff. Like, I mean, sometimes she'll be like, oh, like, get on your toes a little bit more, which is like, yeah, that's normal. Like, yeah, I need to get on my toes. Like, kind of reminds me about that stuff. Like, the biggest thing is like mentally how to like get through things. So like, we work, especially this year, we're working on like, if you make a save, if you're like not playing well in a drill, then we switch up the rotation. So like, whoever's making the most saves is going to go first, just to like kind of like switch it up mentally. And like, you have to almost think about that, because that was a hard thing for me last year, was like, oh my God, I'm not playing well. Oh my God, my stats are this. That was just kind of very hard for me to overcome, I guess. And so just working on that and thinking about in drills and practice and stuff, like what is realistic and what isn't realistic, because there could be no defense on them and I'd get in my head, I'd be like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? I'm like, it's a shooting drill. Why? She's like, it's a shooting drill, why are you in your head? I'm like, I don't know. So yeah, don't think about like what you can control and what you should do, like, and what are the things you can control, and like things like talking, things like interceptions, clears, things I can't control. So I'm not seeing the ball. What are things I can control that can help my team? That's like one of her biggest things. She would always tell me, like, okay, you haven't made a save. Great. I'd love for you to make a save right now, but what are other things you can do that can help the team right now? And that was like a big thing for me. That was like, okay, like, I'm not just in there to save the ball. Like, that's not my only role on the team. Like, yes, that's the biggest role of my position, like the biggest thing in my position. Yes, I need to save the ball, but I can do other things that can help my team as well. Yeah. Which was like very big for me to like.
Yeah, 100% agree. And like, even making it a focus when you're not seeing the ball, like, all right, I'm going to win a ground ball, or I'm going to chase out a shot, or I'm going to, I'm going to pump up so-and-so, my teammate. Right. And I think that really helps. And then because you do that, like, then guess what? You're right back in the game mentally, and then you start making more saves.
Exactly.
So yeah, that's a great point. And the other great point too is like, yeah, your role is to make saves, right? I mean, ideally the goalies are making saves, but really your role is also your bigger role is to help the team win. Yeah. And sometimes all you need is that one save to help the team win. Especially in the women's game, geez, because the shots are they're always right on top of you, right? Like the goalie position is way harder in the women's game, if you ask me.
It's different. It's very different.
Yeah, but it's different and it's harder because the shots are all right on top of you.
Yeah, that's true.
If you ask me, but the numbers don't lie too. Women's save percentages tend to be a little bit lower, but yeah. Anyway. Cool. Well, that's great. So yeah, what a treat to be able to work with such a great coach. Yeah. And, yeah, it was an interesting comment too about, don't pick a school because of the coach. Why do you say that? That's what I
was always told. Yeah.
Yeah. Why do you think people say that?
Coaches leave.
Yeah. There you go. So it's gotta be a factor though, because if they don't leave, then you're there with them for 4 years. So it's certainly a factor, but not the driving factor, I think is what you're saying.
Yeah, that's not supposed to be the driving factor. That definitely should be a factor. But
right. Yeah.
I don't think that should be like the driving factor. But I came out here and loved it so much. I was like, I don't really love the coaching staff. I love the school too.
Yeah. And it's probably, so you grew up DC or Maryland area, like that area. And then now you're in Denver. What are the differences? It's got to be a little bit different.
Weather, it's very different, and I mean the altitude's kind of different, but I don't know. I noticed it when we do conditioning, but
yeah,
when I'm playing, not really. But yeah, the biggest difference is the weather.
Which how so? Don't you guys get snow back there as well?
Well, yes, but so it will be we'll wake up, it's 40 degrees, we're walking to practice, cold, and then the sun comes out and it feels 70. You take all your sweatpants off. It's ridiculous. The sun is so hot here, so hot. I remember I came home after break and I was like, oh, the sun's out. I worked out. I come out. So at home I work out at 6 a.m. every day. And so it's dark in the winter when you're going there. And I walk out and the sun's coming out, or is out, I guess, already. And I'm like, oh yeah, finally it's gonna be warm, and it's freezing. The sun is not warm here. I forgot about that.
Yeah, yeah. I gotcha. Talk to me about working out at 6 a.m. every day. Why do you do that?
So the place I work out at home, it's called Healthy Baller. They do this thing called college prep, and it's basically 5 days a week, 3 days of conditioning and lacrosse, and then 3 days of lift. And so it's all college lacrosse girls in a group. They do it for men's lacrosse too, and I think they do one for soccer as well. But it's just all of us, we get up, play with each other, lift with each other, and just get done, ready for the day. Also, then I can work, so that's kind of nice too.
Yeah. I tried working out in the morning. I gotta say, I'm an after work workout guy, so didn't work for me. But I can appreciate people who develop that habit.
It's the day started. It's a nice get out of bed, get your body moving.
Yeah. No, I get it. Speaking of weather, I was gonna ask. There's one particular game that you guys had last year that got canceled because of coldness. Talk to me about that game. I've never heard of that.
Boston College.
Yeah.
So we started the game. It was snowing, I'm pretty sure, when it started the game. And I remember the game before that, I was cold. And so the coaches called me the night before, and they're like, okay, what are you wearing? Walked me through everything I'm wearing. Okay, so we're going to put on leggings, sweatpants, all of this stuff. Cause it was supposed to be 5 degrees or something.
Yeah.
And then the reason it got canceled is because it hit 0 degrees. But I was literally looked like a big marshmallow walking out on the field. And so they gave us breaks. We had to go inside between every quarter, was the agreed upon thing. And the biggest thing our coaches were if it hits the third quarter and it's too cold, they will stop the game. That's what they told us. So make sure you're not waiting, because we were very much a second half team last year. And so they're guys, it's third quarter, it's too cold. And so we had to go inside in between every quarter. And so the problem was the breaks were longer. And so my coach would be like, okay, we got to go inside and get warm. But then the break's so long, you need shots. So it's like, you have to go get warm, but then you have to come back out and get more shots, which is kind of interesting thing to like manage. And so, like the first quarter and second quarter, I didn't really have many saves, but I had like, I think 4 caused turnovers in those 2 quarters. And then the third quarter after halftime, I was like, it was 9-5 at half. And the third quarter, I was like, okay, like I'm overthinking this. Like I was like, it's Boston College, like freaking out, like whatever. And I just came out and I was like, nope, I'm going to like, whatever. And I played my best quarter of the game. Well, in a different way. I made like 3 saves in that quarter and I didn't let any in. And I remember I came to the bench and they're like, the game's canceled. And I was like, you're kidding me. Like I just started saving the ball. It's like, great. Awesome.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, so it was very frustrating for all of us. The parents were getting crazy in the stands about it, but yeah.
That's a good story. So what do you do for those cold weather snow games? You got leggings, you got the sweats.
Yes.
You wear like, do you wear anything underneath your gloves?
Sometimes I'll wear like the medical gloves.
Yeah.
Under my gloves. But yeah, I don't really wear anything else other than those because I like to be able to like feel my hands.
Right.
Like,
the feeling. My hands. Right.
But yeah, so I'll usually wear medical gloves if it's really cold. Double up my socks. If it's like anywhere near cold, I'll double up my socks. My feet get cold easily.
Yeah.
And then
I feel like that's a basketball thing too. I always used to wear 2 pairs of socks. Did you? No.
I always had like the thicker socks, like compression socks for basketball. So like I guess it was kind of even to doubling up socks. But yeah, my feet get cold. And I also make kick saves a lot. Like that's like my go-to save. So don't want to like my feet going numb. And then sometimes I'd wear leggings under my sweatpants, or sometimes I'd just wear sweatpants. Never just leggings. I'm just not a leggings person. And in the snow, I wore that one game, Boston College. I wore rain pants on top so that it would like keep me dry.
Yeah, like waterproof. Yeah.
And then I can't like long sleeve Under Armour under my jerseys. Sometimes we do like we have like long sleeves too. So I do an Under Armour and then a long sleeve or something like that. So.
Awesome. Well, you end up having a great year. And you know, earning the starting role as a freshman, which doesn't happen all that often, right? And that's got to be one. You got to feel like, I don't know. Actually, you tell me. I'll ask you this: did you have a lot of nerves going into the season, starting as a freshman?
Yeah, I was very nervous, but I also was kind of in denial that I was starting for like a good bit. Like, in our last volleyball game of the fall, I had started that game. And I was like, oh, I probably just like trying to throw like everything. I was like, yeah, I'm just making up excuses. Like, I'm not going to start. Like, I was like, oh yeah, they're throwing me in there just to see what happens. Like, whatever. And then, like the week before the game, we were going through like the board of like, we do this board and it's like goals. And so every game we check off, like if we met the goal, it's like save percentage, all this stuff. My coach was like, you're the starter. You got to put out the save percentage yourself. And I was like, it was like 4 days before the game and I was like, oh, I'm like actually the starter. Like I was like I could have been, but like it kind of just like hit me and I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm actually starting this game. And like all my friends, because everyone like no one really like knew like I don't know. Some people say they knew. I was like, I didn't know. I was a freshman. I was like, I'm not expecting to play. And so everyone was like, oh my God, you're starting. I was like, yeah, everyone keeps saying that to me. And then the first game, I was like, oh, so nervous. I was just so excited. I was like, oh my gosh, I get to play. Like my parents came out for it and I was like, oh my gosh. And my parents took me out to dinner the night before and my dad's like talking about his shuffleboard game that he needs to win. And I was like, Dad, I'm playing in my first college game tomorrow. And he's like, no, man, you don't understand. I lost my shuffleboard game last night. And like, I'm 2 down. Like, I got to come back tonight. I was like, Dad, what? It was kind of a nice distraction. But I was like, why are you talking about your shuffleboard game right now? It was actually like exactly what I needed. But
yeah, right. Oh, that's great.
Shuffleboard game. But yeah, I was nervous, definitely. But once I got that first save in the game, I was like, I'm fine. Like, I can do this. Like, in the defense, just like so supportive. Like our defense, we all play as a unit. The goal goes in, it's all of us. Like, it's on all of us. Like, our zone is very much teamwork oriented. So
yeah, that's great. That's great. How do you deal with a situation of, like, let's say you write 50%. I want to save 50% for my save percentage, right? And you don't hit that. How do you, as a person, deal with that?
Well, I definitely didn't hit that a few games. But I just kind of think about like the next game, sort of. I mean, last year I would do this thing where if I didn't play well, that next practice I would play like lights out, but I needed to focus it more on the game because I would be so like frustrated that I would take it out in the next like practice. But like what I've kind of learned, my biggest thing over the summer that like I wanted to work on was my mental game. And so my whole thing over the summer was like the next save, focusing on the next save. So like, yes, I just let in 3 or however many, like just the next save, like focusing on me and the ball. And like what got me, like I'd worked with a sports psych over the summer on like my mentality, because I just like my season, if you look at my stats, went downwards. But like I just started spiraling because I couldn't comprehend like the whole 50, like not hitting 50% in a game, or like one game I had like 60 and the next game I had like 0. Right. And so I was just like, how is that happening? Like I was so confused. I didn't know what I was doing wrong. Like I had superstitions like, oh, if I do this before that, then like that worked for this game, then maybe it'll work for this game. Oh, now it's not working. What's going on? Like sort of like that sort of thing. And so my biggest thing over the summer was figuring out how to get out of a slump without spiraling. And one thing my sports psych really told me was like, if you think about it too much, like if you're like, oh, like I don't want to think about this, like, oh, I'm playing in a slump, like don't think about that, you're gonna think about it more. And so like his biggest thing was like refocus that onto something else. Like when you started goalie, like what made you different? What made you stand out when you were like in the recruiting process? And I was like, I just played me and the ball. Like I didn't worry about who I was playing with. I went to camps where I knew no one. Like all I was focused on was like me and the ball. I didn't know who had the ball. Like, yes, that's important in a game, but like the most important, like I just was focusing on like playing just me and the ball. And so like that's a big thing that I've been working on this summer and like this fall is the next save. Like, okay, that went in. Okay, I made a great save. Like good for like I made a good save. Like, yes, I need to. My coach like, you need to like take that in. That's a good thing. I'm like, I know, I'm just focusing on the next save. Like I don't want to get too caught up in like what happens before and just like focus on what's coming next.
Yeah. Love that. Yeah. So do you like after you give up a goal, do you have a little bit of a routine that you go through?
Usually pick up the ball and I squeeze my shaft like really, really hard. And then sometimes I'll like press it into like my legs. And then I'll usually like put my heels on the line, like I'll usually go back into the goal and like take like a deep breath, like think about, like sometimes I'll think about what just happened and then move on. Like what I've been trying to work on is not overthinking it. I'm like, okay, that just happened. Oh, I should have slid through the ball, or oh, I should have driven my hands or been on my toes, and then move on is kind of what I try to do. And then I try to look at the ball. Like the draw is like lined up. I have a straight tunnel vision to the, like I can see straight at the ball. And I just look at the ball for like 5 seconds. I'm like, okay, just me and the ball, like just me and the ball. Like I got this. Like I know the game. I know how it's played. Like I can do this. And that's kind of just like how I try to reset myself.
It's good.
Jump around a little too sometimes.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
Why not? That's awesome. And what a great resource to have that sports psychologist. What other, I'm curious if there's other, apart from, sort of refocusing and focusing on that next save. I'm curious if there's other lessons that he or she has taught you.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely learned a lot. I mean, I like kind of like happiness after a game was like a big one for me too. Like if I didn't play well, I was like, I'm not hanging out with anyone. Like I'm like in a hole. And so like a big thing for me was like not missing up moments because of that. Like and that like lacrosse doesn't need to be my happiness, but it can be like my outlet. Cause like I have struggled with mental health like my entire life. And so like kind of like using it as my outlet and not letting it build more onto myself of like not being able, like all that stuff. Like I'm very close with my sisters, and so like I was missed them a lot, and so like I would be like something wasn't going right in their lives, and they would call me about it, and I would be like, oh, I'm not playing well in lacrosse and I'm not helping my sisters. Like I would kind of spiral. And so like the biggest thing he's been telling me is the reason I started sports was an outlet. Like I didn't know at the time what mental health was when I was whatever age, but like that was my outlet. Like I had a crummy day at school. I had a crummy day with friends, bad day with my family. Like I'd work my butt off in sports and I'd take it out there. Like that is how was my outlet my entire life. And I kind of like lost that because I put so much pressure on myself in lacrosse, and learning to get that back, it almost like made me love the sport even more, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. So let me see if I understand, because I think it's a very important point, right? So like you're using the sports as an outlet, which I relate to quite a bit. In addition to loving sport, like loving playing. Yeah. I mean, like going out on the field and just like physically exerting and competing was just such a great outlet for me. And you kind of got away from that due to, I don't know, like the stress or the competition, or
just I'm the oldest of 3 girls, me and my sisters, and my parents, like they're great parents, love them. My little sister's like, you know how every parent kind of has like their child. They'll deny it, but like,
well, it's definitely me for my parents. But anyway, go on.
But so like we're all 2 years apart, and so I was just kind of like grow up, like here you go. And so my dad was always like with my middle sister, and my mom was always with the littlest one, because of course mom's with the baby. Right. And so I was always just like kind of been like, okay, like I'm expected to just be able to do this. I'm expected to be able to like just like laundry. I do my own laundry, like did the dishes when I was like however whatever age. And just like expectations and like that front, like just do your homework. No one's gonna be make sure you do it. Like just do your homework. Like you have to go to practice, like you have to do well in sports, like all of this stuff. Like I just felt like I had so many expectations on me. And like as to be a role model for my sisters as well. And so I think I just like, even though I know I felt they'd still love me, like I couldn't really comprehend that a lot. Like that was very hard for my brain to comprehend, because it's been instilled in me since I was little, like not by anyone, by myself. I've made this up in my head that right. I had to be perfect, and I had to like set the expectations and like all that sort of stuff. And so I tend to put a lot of pressure on myself to meet like the expectation. And if like I didn't play well, oh, like everyone at home is going to be disappointed in me and that sort of stuff, which isn't true. Everyone, right. I came home and I did not play my best season that I know I'm capable of. And I came home and everyone was like, that was great. And I was like, thank you. Like just learning to be like, okay, thank you. Like that's also the thing I'm working on, saying like taking the compliments, not spiraling backwards. But yeah.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing that, because I know like, you know, mental health can be a tough thing to talk about. And there's a lot of goalies out there that probably feel the exact same way as you. I know now that you explained it that way, I've gotten messages from young goalies that are like, you know, they explain, they're like, oh, my parents, even as a youth, like my parents bought me all this equipment. Like they put in so much, right? And now like I can't let them down. And so they feel that, and and they live with that. And it can be very taxing on you mentally. And so I think hearing other stories and hearing different ways to deal with it is a big help. So thank you.
I agree. I think also like I like to tell, I'm very open about like my like mental health and stuff, because like when I was little, I had no clue what any of this was. Like I was just like, there's something wrong with me. Like, why do I feel like this? Like, why am I stressed? Like, I didn't even realize that like I had very bad anxiety, and like I was probably like very depressed as a kid. Like I didn't even understand that, because I was just like, oh my God, there's like, this isn't like normal. Like, I don't know. Like there's nothing like that can be like actually wrong with you. Like you can't be like actually sick. Like, so yeah.
Right. Yeah. What would you say then to a young goalie that is listening to this and, feeling like they're going through some mental health struggles? Is there like a general piece of advice you would give them?
I mean, personally, I would say talking to someone like sports psychs. I I didn't even know that was a thing. Like when I first started therapy, I was just a regular therapist. And like when I started meeting with sports psychs, I was like, wow, like game changer. How they can incorporate and like help you use sports the way like they're meant to be used almost.
Mm,
Like they are supposed to be an outlet. And just like being able to get that back, because that's how you initially, like when you start sports, unless your parents threw them in there and you hate sports and they're just like you have to move, which you're probably not playing a sport anymore. But
right.
like when I first started sports, that was like an outlet, and that's for most kids. Like most kids you see go out there and they're like hustling their butt off for that ball and they're kicking as hard as they can, like or whatever, in soccer, whatever sport it is, like that's like their fun part of their day. They just were exhausted all day in school, and like this is the fun. I think just bringing back the fun, but also not putting too much pressure on it to be fun. Because I think that's a big thing too. I was like, why am I not having fun? Like, why is this not fun for me right now? Like, you can have off days. Like, that is normal. But like letting it be fun also, like you didn't make a save, so what, have fun with it, like go out and like play it a little differently, like mess with the shooters, kind of just making it fun for yourself is a very big thing that I learned. And not
Mm-hmm.
forcing the fun, but like making it like I don't, that's like kind of hard to explain, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, typically, I mean, if you're in lacrosse and you're in it for a long time, like you're doing it because it's fun. You do have fun,
Yeah,
right? And at a certain point, you're right. It becomes like you get away from that. It's very easy to get away from that. And a lot of times it's just reminding yourself of why you got started with lacrosse in the first place, right? I mean, I play this because it's fun, and then when you're having fun, you play better, and it's like this like spiraling circle of like, all right, I'm having fun, I'm playing great, now I'm having more fun.
yeah,
So
agreed.
yeah, awesome. So what then? What do you do then, or what are you going to do next time you get into a slump?
um so I've been like kind of working on it in practices and stuff, but like the biggest thing is just like focusing on the ball. Like my biggest thing is like, okay, like I've been in practice, like I've started practices recently, and well actually I played in a game this summer, and I like the first, so I played in like this tournament in Lake Placid, and the first game I was like, oh, like I kind of went in. I was nervous. Like it was my first game I'd played in a while. Like typical nerves are normal. That's another thing that that's okay to be nervous.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I was like nervous, and I was like, okay, I played average, but like I could play better. And then the second game, I could not save the ball, and I was like, oh my gosh. And I started spiraling, and I was like, okay. I had let in like 4 in a row, and I was like, okay, I just need to breathe. Like calm down, I know how to play. Like I like went through like everything in my head that like the sports psych had told me, and he was like, okay, don't focus on like too much. Like I would focus on like others' approval, like looking at other people and being like, oh my god, they look like they're so disappointed in me. Like I would look at that, and my sports psych was like, well, if you think about like, if you're like, don't look at them, don't look at them, you're gonna look at them. And I was like, okay, like let's think
Yeah.
about something else to look at. So I was focusing my attention on the ball, and I was like, okay, focus on the ball, focus on the ball, focus on cutters coming through the middle, talk with my defense on where the cutters are, like focus on the ball. And I ended up having, like, this may not work every game, but I ended up having 4 saves back to back. And I was like, it felt so like good to be able to get out of that. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can do that. And after that, like the rest of the summer and like this fall, my game has just like completely changed, because I used to have this like fear of like, oh, it's gonna hit the fan. Like I'm not going to make a save, and then I'm just going to go into a hole. And
Mhm.
so now it's kind of like, okay, if I go in a hole, I know how to get out of it now. And
Yeah.
like I've been able to do it in practice now. Like I'll have an off drill, I have a good drill, the next drill. Like it's instead of like it going wrong and being like, oh my god, I can't save anything, and spiraling for the rest of the practice or the rest of the game. Like it's like, okay, I know how to get out of this, and like just focus. Like why am I playing this? How, like, why did they want me here? Like, why did they recruit me? Play like my game. It's because it's my game. It's not because like I need to be playing like someone else. It's because of my game. And so I just need to play my game and me and the ball, and I'll be fine. So that's kind
Yeah,
of,
that's awesome. Let's go. That's a great feeling too, right? Like,
It is.
you're gonna, you're gonna hit a slump again. Let's just be honest. Like every goalie goes through probably one, maybe two a season, and one goalie told me he goes through 1 to 2 per game. So like,
I probably have done that.
yeah, it's gonna happen, and just knowing that like you have the tools and the resources and the mindset that like, all right, cool, when it happens, no problem. Like, because when you don't have that feeling, when you don't have that confidence, it can spiral pretty quickly.
Yes,
right?
it can.
Yeah. Awesome. What about, as a freshman, it's sometimes tough to be like a leader of the team or of the defense. How do you go about doing that?
So that was something I really struggled with, especially like talking, communication, because I was like, I don't want to be yelling at anyone. Like, you're not yelling, you're helping. And like my defense had to come to me and be like, no, tell us, like yell at us, because that's not like you being rude. That's not like you being not taking your place as a freshman. That's helping us in the game. Like you need to help us and tell us where the ball is. You need to help us and tell us if you want us to come to or go away in the clear. Like you're helping us. You're not like you're not mistaking your place. And that was like a big thing. Like, the defense and upperclassmen on my team were very good about making sure that was drilled into my brain. But like I needed to talk and I needed to be a leader in order for us to be successful as a team.
Yeah, I know a lot of young girls say that. They're like, how do I communicate with my team without being like, without sounding like I'm being too mean on them? Right.
Yeah.
Like, and a lot of it's the mindset of like, you're not being mean, right? It's helping them. Right. And if you talk with that tone, then yeah, I mean, you're helping them.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. I love it. Well, Emelia, good luck in the upcoming season. I'll be watching. Last season, I feel like was the first season that I really got into women's lacrosse. I've always been into men's lacrosse, but I really got into women's lacrosse last season, watched a ton of games. I love it.
Yeah, it's fun.
So, well, cool. Like I said, good luck in the upcoming season. If you had to leave the goalies out there with one final piece of advice, last thing we're going to leave them with, what would that be? last piece of advice.
Oh God, I don't know. I would say probably don't change your game to be like someone else. Like, it's good to take like bits and pieces from other goalies and like learn from them. Like, that's how I built my game, was watching other goalies and taking bits and pieces of things I liked from them. But don't, like, there's a reason you stand out from other goalies because you're different, and like don't change your game to try to play more like one goalie because like, yeah, no. That didn't make sense, but don't change your game. Is like my biggest.
No.
Don't assimilate or whatever it's called.
I love that. Well, that's a good piece of advice. Learn from goalies, right? But you don't need to be them.
You don't need to be them.
Great piece of advice. We'll end the show on that one. Emelia, thank you so much.
Thank you.